most people just don't get it. Why does it have to be so different? Caucuses, the Texas two-step, which we were talking about earlier. Primaries in another place. 6 weeks before Pennsylvania, 25 states on Super Tuesday.
Both parties have been very deferential to local custom and what the states wanted to do. I think there will be some examination of whether there should be more standardization, so that one thing that the NAS plan or the Ohio plan addresses are these long gaps between some events. So there's certainly some concern about that.
Just so I'm clear, on the Republican side, there are these two clear plans and others. On the Democratic side, nothing firm, concrete yet.
No specific proposals yet.
You're still trying to get through 2008.
Right. We want to win this election. We think this is a historic election, and we want to win it. So that's what we're focusing on. But Governor Dean has expressed some views, which I think will be listened to in the party. One is he is very dubious about caucuses, to the point of being opposed to them. The other is he actually likes the way the Republicans do it, making their rules at their convention. However, we have not had a process for doing that for this time.
Mm-hmm. I'm not quite sure where we are on time.
Let's pick up this, the notion of caucuses, which it really has come up for the first time in this cycle. I don't know that the majority of people, voters in the country, would even know what a caucus actually was before they saw it this time. So it has been challenged as being less than democratic. So I think it's very much in the interest of certainly the National Caucus, because we advocate that people engage face-to-face, citizen-to-citizen, as a form of retail politics, not necessarily having the candidate meet every citizen, but citizen-to-citizen engagement. So I think, Mike, perhaps you can defend the caucus process as representative, as productive to the democracy at large, and what do you think the reform might look like?
Well, first thing that everybody should understand, there is a difference between the caucus and the primaries. Caucus is a neighborhood meeting financed by the party. Caucuses are conducted by the parties, paid for by the parties. Primaries are functions of the parties, as far as maybe laying out the calendar, and the legislators, paid for by the state. That's number one. Two, caucuses are neighborhood meetings where other things besides presidential candidates, they're not just held in presidential election years. They're held to get people engaged in the party, recruit people into the party. They talk about platforms, they talk about rules, they talk about credentials. So there's more involved in this process than what you see on that night in January, when hopefully we'll move it to February, late February in the future, but when they get together to try to determine what the presidential candidate is. So there are good ways to recruit people into the party. There are good ways to get people involved in the process. We can make many improvements. I said it this year. We had unbelievable record attendance, and we need to make it better. We need to tweak it. We need to reform it. We need to allow it so it be more inclusive.
Right, but ultimately, though, just a few thousand people decide. I think people are amazed by the small number of
It didn't happen this year in Iowa.
Tens of thousands.
Iowa's not a big state. We have 3 million people, and on our Democratic side this time, we had more actually showed up for our presidential caucus and showed up for our gubernatorial primary 2 years ago. So just to give you the impact of Obama and Clinton and all the other candidates.
At that point, you had all the other candidates in there.
Then you had all the other candidates into the mixture. When you talk about the caucus process, it's an easy thing to organize. The organizational process that Obama put in place. It's about organization. It's about networking.
Caucuses are more widely used in American democracy than most people realize. Many states, including mine, Massachusetts, select our state convention delegates in caucuses. After the primary, we do have a primary, but the primary determines the percentages for each candidate, but we use caucuses to select the individual delegates.
Same thing happens in Iowa.
What caucuses do is they do depend on organization. They basically, though, bring the most interested citizens, the most interested and informed voters out to participate in the process. And there are those, I don't know how the professor would feel about it, but there are those who write about politics professionally who think that is a democratic value, to have more informed voters participate in the process.
Okay, so before we go, I think we have about 10 minutes left. Let me ask you first about the Texas two-step.
Oh, you got to get it.
I knew you were going to get that.
Anybody want to step up and defend it?
Well, since it was of most relevance in the democratic process, I'll speak about it first.
One man, one vote,
And
one person, one vote?
I will say that no one, I think, outside of Texas had particularly focused on that process. before it took place. I think there are a lot of questions about what sort of validation there is of whether people vote in the primary in the daytime and thereby qualified to participate in the caucus in the evening. And moreover, the fact that the results could be different for the two candidates between the primary and the caucus, I think bothers people. Now, if you go back to what I was saying a minute ago, you might say, okay, one reflects one level of involvement by voters, and the other one reflects the more activist and informed voters. Right. Nonetheless, historically, I'm told the purpose of the two-step process was to make sure that those who were most involved in the party actually got to go to the convention.